Hello and welcome to yet another Pro Football Spot Seahawks Google Hangout. This one yet again is with myself and Ken over in Madison, Wisconsin. How are we, Ken?
Doing well. I'm enjoying the first full day of March Madness over here.
Yeah, and it kicks off for the campus tomorrow night. Well, tomorrow night in UK time.
Yep, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah. So we talked a little before we come on. Who's in your final four on your bracket? I'm guessing you've done a bracket.
Yeah, I've made a couple of brackets this year. In past years, I've only done one, but I like West Virginia, Michigan State, Kansas, and Oklahoma.
Nice. Well, mine is Arizona, Baylor, which we won't talk about, Michigan State, and I think NC. I think I've got North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, Michigan State looks so good out of all those.
Yeah. Well, it's ruined already. So thanks to the smart boffins at Yale. We're about 10 days into the new league season. 10 days since the free agency period started with the tampering period. Then it kicked off with all the signings on last Wednesday night. Seahawks have been relatively busy, if not with outside free agents. Only two outside free agents have been signed. The first deal was done with a retention with Atuba Rubin, the defensive tackle, who impressed relatively last year alongside Brandon Mebane, Jordan Hill, and Frank Clark. And he was kept on a 3-year deal, I think it was. What were your reactions to the Rubin deal? Were you surprised or?
I loved it. I mean, it kind of set in stone my belief that Brandon Mebane was as good as gone because it was unlikely they were going to keep both of them. But it was a good signing last year. It filled a need, and he was a great run stuffer right in the middle, and that's what they need to keep defending the run so well. So it's a nice, affordable deal for a veteran player who's been around the block, and I think he fit in well with Seattle, and he'll continue to do so.
Yeah, I think that's what we said last time we did one of these. It was always going to be one or the other. When we signed Rubin so early in the process, I think we signed him Tuesday night. I think it came down that we signed him, and the cost of the deal was pretty team friendly, but also it rewarded him for how he played in the situations he was put in last year. And I think he impressed people in the building in VMAC. So yeah, it made a lot of sense. The money made sense. And obviously, as we saw a few days later, it's someone I haven't put on our list. Saw a few days later, Mebane was probably never going to stay once that deal was signed. While we're on Mebane, I haven't written down on the players we're going to cover, but we may as well. Were you surprised? Obviously, with that, you wasn't a bit surprised when Brandon Mebane left. Were you surprised at his destination?
Yeah, I mean, to a 3-4 system in San Diego, he's going to have a lot more weight on his shoulders. Definitely a lot of double teams will be coming his way. And for a veteran guy, you're not necessarily sure how that's going to turn out. It's such a crucial position for that 3-4 base, at least in terms of defending the run. But Mebane's been around a long time and has done a solid job in Seattle, and I'm sure that's what the Chargers were looking at. I was actually surprised, though, because up until that deal was signed, I mean, you and I were talking on Twitter that the Seahawks had reached out to him and made an offer. So I thought maybe it would be an incentive for him to stay with the team he's been with since he got drafted. But pull the 180 and go to a new experience, and I wish him the best. But by signing Rubin, we basically filled the need, and we can address depth through the draft a bit better.
Yeah, I think that's what I think. The fact he went to San Diego is probably the most surprising thing. It wasn't that much of a surprise that he left. You can't blame him for looking to get paid. As you say, he's been here for 9 years. He's definitely played his part in what the team has done over those 9 years, especially the last 4 or 5. But it was quite sad to see the tweet pop up from the Chargers saying they signed him and he wasn't going to be coming back, because he was one of 2 players who predated Schneider and Pete Carroll, and now that's down to 1. As you say, in San Diego, he's probably going to be with Eric Weddle out of town now. He's probably going to be jettisoned straight into a leadership role in that locker room, because it's probably going to be quite a young team on the defensive side. They've obviously got Marvin Ingram. They've got the cornerback, but apart from that, it's it's a relatively Manti Te'o, but on the defensive side, it's the team where he's probably going to have to be a leader, which he probably was here, and it's something we're going to have to fill through the draft and through people like Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, are going to have to step up.
Yeah.
The second one of the people who decided to stay, I think, was Jeremy Lane. I think he came down the line second. As I said last time around, I wrote about it at season's end. He was the one which I thought was the most important one to keep of the 18 or 17, however many we had, because of the draft depth this year. It looks a bit thin, and you'd also have to teach them up like we have with the Deshaun Sheds and Byron Maxwell's, and even Richard Sherman didn't start from day one. So Lane staying with how he played and how the defense looked when he came back at the back end of last season was important. The money isn't that garish. It's pretty similar to what we paid another one of our free agents a couple of days later. But what were your thoughts on? Were you surprised Lane stayed? And the money, as I said, was pretty reasonable, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty reasonable. For your $23 million overall, which isn't that bad, especially when you think about what Byron Maxwell got paid when he left elsewhere. So I thought that might have played into Lane looking around at least just to see what other teams might be willing to offer him. But I think it suits him well to stay in the system that he's learned all the techniques with, and just fits really well as a slot guy and can play on the outside if need be. And you mentioned the draft class of cornerbacks. The only ones I'd be safe with selecting would have to be first rounders, and those are the only ones, and very thin as well, who could start right now. A guy like Eli Apple out of Ohio State, but with the offensive line being a much better, bigger need for Seattle, it's a great move to retain a guy like Jeremy Lane, who's made some big plays in big situations. And when he was injured and absent, you could definitely see it hurt the secondary. So it's a good overall move to keep the core roster intact and make sure that secondary is as sturdy as can be.
Yeah, and I think if you had from the 9 of 11 starters from week 17 are all coming back. I think only Irvin and Mebane won't be coming back. So that's for a defense which has so much turnover the last couple of years that Seattle's had, to keep Lane and to keep Rubin and to keep other guys in the building will be key with all the changes we're probably going to see on the other side of the ball. One of those names just mentioned, one of the first departure, wasn't surprised because the money he got from his new team, Seattle, were never going to pay, was Bruce Irvin, who signed for the Raiders. He got his just rewards, maybe, from what he thought he deserved. But as I said, the Seahawks were never going to stretch that far. Were you disappointed or surprised that Irvin left?
I was surprised Oakland was the team that eventually landed him. I thought Atlanta was going to be a sure thing just because he would look so good on one end and Vic Beasley on the other. But a good move by Oakland. Oakland was really aggressive in the first few days, not just with Irvin, but a couple of other big signings. So I was really impressed with how Oakland attacked the market and got some of the best guys. And I mean, thinking about Irvin, I mean, he did a good job both pass rushing and dropping back when the Seahawks needed him to. A little bit irked by his recent comments about grilling the Seahawks a little bit and saying that the Seahawks limited him and he's barely scratched the surface. And it's like, well, come on, man. You had a couple of years to really showcase what you can do, and the sacks aren't really indicative of the kind of money he's going to be paid. But he's still a good fit for Oakland. I mean, he'll be reunited with Mr. Norton over there, and it should be a good development phase of his career for him. And it's just the money is better used elsewhere. I mean, especially when Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright are already solidified at linebacker, and you can get a couple of guys like KPL and Eric Pinkins who might be able to develop in the next couple of years or just switch things around. So it wasn't a priority ever, and I guess I wasn't really surprised by it.
No, and as a lot of people said on Twitter and stuff, that he's gone to a place where he isn't the number one pass rusher, he's number two, but opposite and behind Khalil Mack. So that's probably something that's going to benefit him. Whereas here, getting that money here, he'd probably be regarded as number one pass rusher. So yeah, it like me, babe, it was sad to see him go, but I wasn't surprised that Seattle didn't stretch the budgets that far with what decisions they've got to make now and next year. With, I think, Doug Baldwin's a free agent next year. Another one who left, the first one of the linemen to leave, was J.R. Sweezy. Now, if we were never going to pay Bruce Irvin the money Bruce Irvin got paid. We were never going to pay J.R. Sweezy the money he got paid. It was so. Would you agree with that? That it was a stretch too far for the Seahawks to be able to keep in, and it wasn't that much of a disappointment to see him get paid elsewhere.
Yeah, I wasn't disappointed at all. I mean, over 30 million is a little bit of a stretch for a guy who definitely needs improvement for pass blocking. And for the way the Seahawks offense is starting to go, you need competent pass blockers. And he was just a little bit too inconsistent. Really good run blocker. So Tampa Bay will like that now that they've got Doug Martin back. And that should really help them offensively. But it's just a ton of money to give to a guy who can't be as consistent a pass blocker as you need, especially since Russell Wilson has to not get sacked as much as he did, at least in the first half of last year.
Yeah, it was Sweezy at times could be all world, but then the next play he would either get a 15-yard penalty or just completely miss on a pretty simple rush from the D lineman or the linebacker coming from the second level. He was an infuriating player because he could be what Tom Cable probably expected him to be, but he never quite reached that level here. And I'm not too sure if he will in Tampa Bay because it's a new system, new coaches, all that, and he's still got a long way to go. He's only in his fourth year as a guard, as an offensive lineman, so he's still got a long way to go. And I was not disappointed that we did not pay him. The next one of the big money departures came a few hours ago with Russell Okung finally finishing his grand old tour of the 50 states. It seemed at one point. New York, Detroit, San Francisco, obviously Seattle were in the rush, but he's a Denver Bronco. Were you surprised that he's left and took the money elsewhere? And I surprised that the Broncos have taken that money on with Ryan Clady still around.
Yeah, that one was really surprising. I mean, other guys that were affiliated with on Pro Football Spot have been tweeting about it a lot and seeing whether it's a tool to navigate that Ryan Clady situation. And I don't know what his strategy is this offseason because there's all that C.J. Anderson talk as well, and matching money and giving money to some players over others. But I mean, Russell Okung probably got the best offer after going around the country. You can add Pittsburgh to that list. I think he visited them as well. And you figured he was going to cash in somewhere. I mean, after Kelechi Osemele got his, $12 million a year, you figured Okung was a couple of steps below him in terms of where he was on the market ranking. So you knew he'd be getting money somewhere. I'm a little bit surprised that Denver went out of its way to go get him. But at the same time, it's a good move for Okung. I mean, he's been injury prone his entire career, but a chance to get ridiculously paid to be the starting left tackle is a good career move for him. But I mean, at times he did a decent job for Seattle, but I'm not too sad to see him go.
I think I wouldn't be stretching it where he probably was the most consistent person in the offensive line for the Seahawks last couple of years. Even when he was on the field anyway, obviously Max Unger probably had an argument for that before last year, but Justin Britt was up and down. Patrick Lewis was okay, apart from when he faced Aaron Donald. Gilliam was up and down, as you would expect in his first year position. So I think Okung was probably, obviously, clearly the most experienced guy we had up there, and he was probably the most consistent one. So it is a bit of a shame that he's gone, especially when you look at the money where it looks like it's a 1 year, $5 to $8 million, then he gets all the money if he stays healthy and produces. So it's a bit of a strange one why they didn't at least do the 1 year, $5-6 million, because it was something they probably could afford with Sweezy and Irvin and Mebane taking the money elsewhere. And it now leaves the question with 6 weeks to go to the draft. No left tackle, possibly no left guard. We've got a competition probably at right tackle. We've got a competition at centre. It's all up in the air, and it's a big few weeks. But Okung leaving for the money initially when it all first came through was not a surprise. But with how the deal structured, it is a bit of a surprise that the Seahawks didn't at least appear not to have been willing to match the Broncos. The fact he's on the Broncos probably sees Ryan Clady on the market in the next couple of days or couple of weeks, because I don't see Okun as a right tackle. I don't see Clady as a right tackle unless they don't think his body can hold up on the left. But I don't know anything about that because I know he's had a couple of ACL injuries last few years.
Yep.
Another one that you brought up, I haven't wrote down, was the Seahawks cutting the long snapper Clint Gresham. It's not a position that you can scout when you do all the draft talk. Obviously, we had Nate Boyer in last year from the old Army, Army veteran, I think he was, Marine vet.
Yeah.
And now we've got a question mark over the long snapping position. It's a money talks decision, isn't it?
Yeah, the thing I was hearing about was all about cap space, and I mean that deal he struck with the Seahawks seems fairly recent. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but
it was last year.
Was it just last year? Yeah, so
I think it was last year.
It was a bit of a surprise.
It was him or Hauschka last year, and it was the other one the year before. Actually, it might have been 2 years ago. Think about it.
Okay. Well, in any case, I mean, it seemed like he was a guy they wanted to keep around, and you can bring in a ton of long snappers in, and they'll probably get the job done because it's not really a position you think about all that much. But Gresham, he never had any problems, and if it's just a money saving, because the cap room is going to keep getting tighter and tighter for Seattle. But so if it's a move Schneider and Carroll thought was necessary for financial situations, I mean, it's going to be necessary, and they can maybe just take someone off a practice squad in the future or just sign someone outright. But he was kind of under the radar guy who always got his job done, at least.
Yeah, and he actually seemed quite a part of the locker room for a position which he's kind of like a throwaway position, really. Him and Hauschka and Ryan seem to have a good thing going for the most part. Obviously, you had all the fakes and the field goals in frigid temperatures in Minnesota in January. But yeah, I was quite surprised to see him cut. Obviously, a part of that team release was the re-signing of Eric Pinkins, who I know is someone you're keen to see on the field. He's probably on a short leash this summer, and there's probably now or never for Pinkins in Seattle.
Yeah, the leash has been tightening every single year. I mean, whether it's been injuries or positions shifting, I mean, his chances are running out. And, of course, he would have been a long shot right away being a sixth-rounder coming out of San Diego State, a bit of under the radar. It was a 3-3-5 defensive scheme. So there was adjustments that were going to be inherent to them drafting him. But he's definitely had a couple of years now to try and make something work. And I think this is going to be now or never for him, because otherwise they can just go elsewhere.
Yeah, and his case has probably helped with Mike Morgan not here anymore. Although he's really got KPL. There's talk of Mike Neal from the Green Packers is in for a visit, I think. So it's a position where he's got an opening and he's just got to jump through it, really.
Yeah.
So obviously free agency is starting to die down. You're getting, apart from Oku's doing, get some minor deals. Is there anyone else out there on the free agency market who you think the Seahawks should or could look at?
Some of the ones I was really looking at in the last week or so. I mean, Alex Boone being on the market was something I was considering because he was a very sturdy guy now with Minnesota. Alex Mack going to the Falcons killed it right there. It would have been a very nice addition at center. I'm still holding on to Joe Thomas now that Osemele is with Oakland. I mean, Osemele was my ideal free agent signing for Seattle. But if they can make a Joe Thomas deal happen, I mean, when Denver was looking around last season, it seemed like Cleveland wanted the moon for Joe Thomas. And it's understandable, such a sturdy left tackle. They would want some high-quality draft picks. And if that's something the Seahawks are willing to do, for the sake of stability on the offensive line, I mean, you're not going to find a ton of left tackles like Joe Thomas out there. So it's a balance of risk and reward. So if they can find a way to make it happen, I mean, now Thomas is a year older, so maybe that affects the kinds of draft picks that Cleveland is willing to settle for. I'm not quite sure what they're trying to do, but I think that would be a nice solidification for free agency for Seattle.
Yeah, with Joe Thomas, there isn't a Joe Thomas going to be available at 26 unless unless Ronnie Stanley or Jack Conklin really fall, there isn't a Joe Thomas who's going to start for 9 years every week.
Yeah.
4 years. So it could. I mean, the cap hit will be a bit alarming with obviously the tight cap we're going to have the next couple of years, but it would be something to consider. Maybe even 50 bunching up picks and chucking 56 in there could be a bit of a steal, but obviously a steal that may consider. It's gone a bit quiet after initial buzz. The Browns may not want to lose too much of their line. I think they lost a guard as well, also. But it's a bit of a weird situation because they haven't really signed anyone apart from, talking of guards, they signed Alvin Bailey off us. That wasn't much of a surprise, was it? Because they seem to be pushing him to add weight or lose weight, and he never seemed to. And he sent out cryptic tweets during the season last year. So I think that was probably the easiest one to swallow of all the departures, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he had a great opportunity this past year to really get a starting job and come into camp healthy and in perfect shape and have a good work ethic, and nothing just seemed to coalesce. And so when he came out for, replacement duty, if Russell Okung got hurt or even at left guard, he's just a step behind everyone else and was more a liability than anything else, particularly with protecting Russell Wilson's blind side. So if Cleveland wanted him, I mean, good for them. It's hard for me to try to understand what Cleveland, their philosophy is for building a team, but good for Bailey if he's going to get a bigger role over there. I mean, as a player, you want to take it.
Yeah. Another one we've missed off the list of players who stuck around was John Ryan. That was pretty much a slam dunk, wasn't it? It was just a case of length and money for John Ryan. John Ryan was never probably gonna go anywhere else, was he? He's a pretty key part of the field position battle, as Pete Carroll often cites as being important. So John Ryan was a slam dunk, wasn't it, really, from day one?
Oh, yeah, the hang time associated with his punting ability is uncontested, and he seems to really love the area. Signed his contract with the Sonics jersey, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
especially on the day when they had a rally in Seattle to try and get the team back yet again, try and build the arena. So I think that was very smart PR for Mr. Ryan.
Yeah, as if it wasn't high enough already about him.
No, with all the self-effacing memes and pictures he posts, he does that when he signs a new four-year deal, I think it was.
3 or 4.
So 10 days in, obviously we still could be signing someone as we sit and chat. What's your overall grade for the Seahawks free agency with comings and goings and money spent and all?
I think the Seahawks have been pretty smart. I mean, there hasn't been anything that's wowed me, so I can't give them an A. But letting the guys go that they did, I think they aren't really missing out. They're letting some guys get overpaid elsewhere and not really hemorrhaging money, which is going to be smart. I mean, they were already limited going into this in what they could do, so they didn't try to overstep their bounds. So I'd give it a solid B+. I mean, nobody's really left that makes me, really be disappointed or saddened about what's going to happen, because the draft is still upon us, and that's where the Seahawks really make their magic anyway. Obviously, there are needs that still need to be addressed, but I think with the draft classes the way they are, I think the Seahawks are going to be able to make things work.
Yeah, I think as you said, with the draft class coming up, I think the one that was tinged with the most disappointment was Mebane leaving, because he was so long tenured here. But you look at interior defensive line in this draft class and you think, that's okay. You can probably get a third, fourth rounder. The same with Curse. If he'd have gone, we could have got a fourth, fifth rounder to replace him.
Yeah.
So that was. Did we touch on Jermaine Curse staying?
We did not.
No, we almost forgot about Pajama Man, Jermaine Curse. That was a surprise. I think I've got to admit, I did not think we'd give him more money than we give Baldwin 2 years ago. I did not think he would get much more than he got in Seattle. But I didn't think it would be us who paid him the money. Were you surprised that Jermaine Curse got paid and stayed in Seattle?
Yeah, I was, and I was surprised at just how quickly he made the decision, because for weeks before this, it seemed like he was going to take his time and really visit other teams and make sure he didn't settle for a hometown discount. But I mean, when I think about wide receivers going to a new place and not immediately adjusting, I mean, Aaron Rodgers had to deal with receivers that were taken off the practice squad, and they didn't really gel very much. Whereas Jermaine Kearse, I mean,
apart from on Hail Marys,
apart from Hail Marys, which are complete flukes. But I mean, Jermaine Kearse, he and Russell Wilson just have something click in there. I mean, in big situations, he isn't afraid to go to him, and whatever other team Kearse could have gone to, I mean, you're looking at a number 3, number 4 option on the depth chart, and there's no guarantee that Kearse is going to be, counted on in such big situations. So, I mean, we were talking last hangout that it just made sense for Kearse to come back, and he's still going to be paid good money. I mean, the way the contract is structured, it's a little bit backloaded in terms of base salary. I think $5 million is his base for the final year of his contract, and that'll give the Seahawks a little bit of maneuverability just in case his production declines every single year. But otherwise, just the 5.5 in guaranteed money, that's not too bad. I mean, the only thing you touched on it is his average salary is now more than what Doug Baldwin's going to be making this year. But of course,
and I'm sure Doug Baldwin and his agent have already noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, you figured with how Baldwin played this past year that the contract stakes would be increased, but now Kearse's signing just makes that even more obvious.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what Baldwin thinks he's worth.
But also with Kearse, as I said to someone at the weekend, he now he's been paid because obviously he's been skirting by on undrafted free agent figures and cap hits. He now can't go missing until December. When the season comes around, he can't just make catches in week 15 up to the playoffs. He has to make catches in week 2 when we're down 10 at home to St. Louis or LA. Sorry. So that's the thing going to be watched for Kearse is because in December and January, the last 3 years, he's been absolute money, but it's the other 3 months of the other 12, 13 weeks of the season where he's been found wanting. So if he can start off as he finishes, it's a good deal, and I'm sure Doug Baldwin and his agent have already put a post-it note on their respective fridges when the deal comes, probably before the end of the season, before Christmas, I'd reckon. I think the Doug Baldwin deal probably gets done. I think we're looking at Cliff Averill, KJ Wright type timeline with that. So obviously, 10 days in, we've lost Okun, we've lost Sweezy, we've lost Bailey. Jamarcus Webb has joined the team. Is he the right tackle as it stands?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, he was listed as a guard, and some of the Seahawks guys that I follow on Twitter pointed that out right away.
Well, the team's tweet listed him as a tackle.
So maybe there's versatility there if they want to play around with him.
But the team's release listed him as a guard, so I don't think they know.
Yeah, I mean it's a low cap signing. I mean 2 years, $6 million. I mean it's low risk.
Yeah, it's right tackle money though, isn't it? Really, it's not.
It is
franchise left tackle money. But where else do you see him be able to line up? He's probably put a fair old bit of pressure on Justin Britt with his arrival, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, initially I thought, they're trying to get him to replace Sweezy at right guard, and that called into question whether maybe the team thinks Mark Lewinsky is ready. I thought in his limited action, I think Lewinsky could be a viable option, especially with another off-season under his belt. But, I mean, I think this Jamarcus Webb is a guy that they can play around with the whole summer and just see where he fits best. And they've already moved Justin Britt around once. They probably aren't afraid to do it again. And you never know where Gilliam's going to end up either. You keep hearing rumors that he'll be the left tackle. Probably not the ideal option. But they can mix and match this offseason, and I think that's what it's all about right now.
Yeah, and it's a draft. It's probably a draft edge in the sense that if the left tackle, right tackle doesn't crop up, they've got a guy who can move inside to right guard, left guard, or vice versa.
Yeah,
he's a big old dude. I think he's 6'6", is he? And he's over 300 pounds. So he's definitely a big dude. So it adds some presence to that influx position. So obviously 10 days in with Jamarcus Webb. Do you think the draft the needs at 26 have altered at all, or do you think the Seahawks came into free agency with this as part of their plan, with how it stands on the offensive line, particularly as part of their plan, and they were fully prepared for this to be the result?
Right. I think what's transpired has only intensified how important offensive line has to be. It'll be interesting to see what kind of guys are available at 26, because obviously defensive linemen are going to be prime at 26. Even if the top guys are off the board, they're going to have a lot of choices to choose from, and those will be very tempting. But I really do hope that they still prioritize offensive line, because, I mean, we were just saying how much mystery there is to the current guys that they have, and we don't know where they'll end up position-wise. So there's got to be some kind of priority going in, that if there's a viable offensive lineman, like if Conklin falls, I mean, you've got to snag him. Because beyond first-round targets, there's really no candidates on offensive line that could start this year.
Not at left tackle. I think that's the main question mark, obviously, now with the coup news today. Do you think a trade up at 26, it's the best defensive lineman or best player available?
It's tough because, I mean, you know how much of a Jonathan Bullard fan I am, and if he slides, I mean, there are a couple second-round offensive linemen that I like, most notably Jason Spriggs out of Indiana, who I think could be a good fit. I know the Seahawks, a couple of writers from SeattlePie.com listed him as a possible option for the Seahawks, but you never know how available he will be throughout that second round. Offensive line is a lot more thin, at least in the first round, and if a couple of those guys go right away, it makes the decision a little bit easier to take a best player available. I mean, I'd still like to see them prioritize offensive line and say, yes, this is the direction we need to go now. We need a solid offensive line that's going to be a long-term fit for the organization. But if Bullard's available at 26, I wouldn't be disappointed if they went with him.
We sat a year ago at 63 expecting Herolis Grasu, and they went Frank Clark.
Yeah.
So we never really know what to expect, but this year it's a lot more, the need up front is a lot more glaring, because Patrick Lewis didn't fare too bad. So I think there's a more glaring need at the position this year than there was last year. But I think at 26, I think Jonathan Bullard before, because I just kind of expected Akun to come back. It's taken him so long to get a deal, but so the last couple of days I've been kind of just penciling in and turning it into Sharpie that Jonathan Bullard was going to be the man at 26. But now it's time to deep dive on people like Spriggs, people like Taylor Decker, maybe even people like Sean Coleman from Auburn, although he's probably going to need a bit of leeway because he's a bit inconsistent, which will probably fit in with Tom Cable. But yeah, I think offensive line at 26 is probably likely, depending how the board falls, I think. But if Conklin falls to 26, I'd happily fly to Chicago and run that pick in for him. But do you think a trade up would be likely? Obviously, they've got 9 picks to play with. Not all of them are tradable this year.
Yeah, I think it's got to be something at the back of their mind. I mean, so many picks to choose to be able to throw away. It's something uncharacteristic if it were to happen. But if they really are keen on a guy, if it's Conklin or somebody else, if they're that keen on him, I think it would be wise to make sure there's going to be some kind of solidification at left tackle, right tackle, what have you. I mean, it would just make sense, because it's not like you need 9 picks every single year to fill out a good roster.
No, and I think with 9 picks, if you got probably use 2 or 3 of them on a line, so you could get bookends and then get someone like a Joe Dahl or Joe Haig or the Missouri kid McGovern. Is Missouri?
Yeah.
I think if you get someone like that in later in the round, because obviously I think Haig and Dahl and McGovern are probably 4th, 5th round, so it's something you could probably do. You could probably get bookends of the first 2 picks quite feasibly. I mean, the first player I watched when I started watching this year was Sean Coleman, and he's got the backstory to Sean Coleman. If you haven't read it, if you're watching this and you haven't read it, please go and watch it and read up about it, because the kid has battled cancer, survived cancer, and I think he missed the first couple of years of his eligibility at Auburn because of his fight, and he beat it out, and he's played in a pretty good looking offense for the most part in his time there. So he's someone who looks to have a Seahawks type story that they look for. So we had Garrett Scott, who obviously was drafted and couldn't play and all that stuff. But a trade up is more likely this year than we thought it would be last year, and they traded up all that way for Tyler Lockett. But I think a trade up at 56 to probably 40, 50 is probably likely. But it also depends a lot on what they do at 26. If they go left or right tackle at 26, they probably don't have to force it at much to get another lineman in the 40 to 50 range, which is probably where they're going to be able to move up to. But I think a trade-up is definitely likely this year with the picks they've got to play with, because they probably haven't got 9 starting positions on that team available, so there's no point. They won't be looking to fill 9 starters. They'll be looking to fill 4 or 5 and then getting a couple players ready for 2017, which is what they're obviously done with, Cassie Smart, obviously, and KPL was hope for that, and Darryl Simon was hope for that a few years ago. But yeah, I think what they do on 26 will play a lot into that. Any other draft thoughts going in with 5-6 weeks to go?
No, it's kind of taken a back seat as I've been trying to make sure the Seahawks are addressing the right needs, but offensive line has still got to be a priority, because, I mean, we saw last year how slow a start that this team had, and it put their playoff hopes in contention, and it would be a lot better if an offensive line was ready to go come the beginning of training camp, have some weeks and months to coalesce, and everybody can be confident about it, instead of, every single week we might throw in somebody new. I mean, it's better to have the questions answered beforehand.
Yeah, because last year they didn't decide on the 5 until week 3 of preseason. I mean,
it was far too late.
16 days to get everything, all the kinks ironed out and stuff. So you'd hope that they've obviously learned from that. You'd expect they seem to be a team which a front office and coaches who learn from mistakes and move on quite quickly. Apart from when you throw the ball at the 1 yard line. So yeah, you'd expect it to be done by the time that the team probably leaves rookie camp at the end of April, the start of May. You'd expect it to be, if not nailed down, you'd expect to have 5 or 6 or 7 playing for 5 spots type deal. Obviously, you got Glowinski coming back for a second year. You got Sokoli at centre or guard maybe. Got Terry Paul, who's still lingering around, although he could be the new Alvin Bailey. We're having to cut a bit of mass, shall we say. Outside of draft and free agency, there's 3 other deals that could be done. Cam Chancellor's posted on Instagram last night that he's not going anywhere. Michael Bennett, I think Mark Dominic has put on somewhere today that he thinks the Seahawks should trade him. He's out of a job for a reason, probably. And then there's Pete Carroll, who's going into his last year. That, for me, is probably the next deal that gets done, isn't it? Pete Carroll's going to be Seahawks coach for the next 3-4 years.
Oh yeah, it's got to happen. I mean, this guy may be one of the oldest coaches, but he looks like he's so young and kicking on that sideline. Seems to love every single minute of it, and it looks like the players love him too, and the enthusiasm and passion that he brings. And he's developed a culture. I mean, in the locker room and on the practice field and on the actual field on Sundays, and it's really resonated with both players and fans. So I think he's just got to be a lock. I mean, just to keep this momentum going in Seattle.
Yeah, I think it's as he keeps saying. I think he's in great shape. Is what he kept saying into the last season. I think it's just a matter of when. I think it'll be a deal which is probably done before the draft as well to get that out of the way. It probably won't take much to get out of the way, but yeah. Chancellor, do you think he's there to stay, or do you think he's just going to be whining come August again?
I would hope he learned from the debacle of the first couple of weeks of the NFL season. That so much talk generated around his name, and not
because he lost, didn't he?
He did.
He lost out. He lost out on game checks, and his reputation in the league, in the building, probably took a pretty substantial hit. I think Earl Thomas seemed to throw indirect shade his way quite often when he was asked on the subject while he was holding out and when he come back. So it was a strange situation which he lost. But he's like I said, I think he's learned from his mistakes. His mistake.
Yeah.
Michael Bennett, that's another one. We're probably going to be talking about this for a bit longer. Are you still confident that a deal's going to be done?
You know, I am. I mean, the way he handled himself last summer really resonated with me. And after the Super Bowl year, when he was talking about the NFL not being Costco and making sure he's going to be paid in his next deal, I was one of the people who thought, you know, you can go earn that money elsewhere. You benefited a lot from how deep that defensive line was, and you aren't the end-all, be-all. But in the years since, I mean, he has been such a disruptive presence on the defensive line, and he's earned every dollar that he's gotten on paper thus far. And so if they do something akin to what they did for Marshawn Lynch, kicking some money into more guaranteed upfront stuff without, risking the balance of the cap right now, I mean, I think there's a deal that can be made akin to what happened with Marshawn Lynch to keep him around and basically reward him for backing up all this contract talk every single year with the numbers he's actually putting on the field. I mean, because he does back it up.
Yeah, and he definitely, I think he had probably a career year.
Yeah.
Probably without the stats backing it up, because if you see some of the all-22 on him, some of how he diced through the lines and stuff, it's that elite top 3, top 5 level.
Yeah.
So as we said, we're 5-6 weeks away from the draft. We've still got a couple of deals probably still to be done in the meantime. If the Seahawks won the clock right now at 26, who would you take?
Oh boy. I mean, the way Conklin performed weeks ago has me thinking he'll be off the board.
He's not getting out the top 15 though.
No, and that makes me so sad because he just fit in so perfectly, I think. And the way he was able to protect Michigan State quarterbacks throughout his several years of playing. I mean, he's a sturdy guy, and there are a lot of good pass rushers in the Big Ten that he had to contend with every single year. So if Jonathan Bullard is available, I mean, he did quite a job at the Combine and some interviews that he's had, and just being a team player and ready to work and play wherever teams will want him to play, because he's one of those Michael Bennett types who could theoretically play both inside and out. So I think if Conklin's off, I mean, Taylor Decker's not too bad of an option, but I think Conklin is a couple of steps at least better than him. But I guess I'd have to go Bullard, even though I've just been talking all about how offensive line is such a huge need. But if Bullard is there, I mean, you're thinking long-term defensive depth and a huge first step kind of guy who can be a playmaker right away. And it's just one of those situations where the ideal fit isn't going to be there, and you just go best player and hope for a guy like Spriggs in the second round, or even your guy Joe Haig later.
Yeah, I think Conklin's probably OT3. I push his OT2 for me. I think Tunsil's also clear number 1. I don't think he was getting out of the top 12, top 15 at the very least. Conklin. Also for me, Andrew Billings is Brandon Mebane Mark II for the most part, but I don't think he's going to make it out of the top. I think he's going to make it past New Orleans. Then you've got Decker. I think Spriggs could possibly, with how he performed at the Combine, someone's going to fall in love with how he looked there. I think he could be a late first round. He could be an option at 26. I wouldn't be surprised if he is the choice at 26. But if I had to choose, it would be your boy Bullard or go for best player. But then you can't really take a risk at not getting a ready-to-start offensive lineman at 56. So it probably would be someone like Taylor Decker or Spriggs. Spriggs would be a bit of a reach at 26, but it's probably unnecessary at that stage because Conklin, the top 3 have gone. Decker's probably going to be gone by then. There's Bullard would be a Grasu, Frank Clark type situation at that point, but I think with what's happened, especially with Okun leaving, the sheer gap in probably the hotspot of offensive linemen in this draft is probably going to be from about 30 to about 45, 50. and we're outside of that for the most part. So it's probably going to be a reach, but Spriggs, Decker, or Bullard.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I was just going to say that Spriggs has been an early second-round projection, and it would be dangerous for Seattle to think that he'd be around by the time the Seahawks get around to their second round. But at the same time, is it too much of a stretch to go at least 6 picks above or something like that, wherever he would have gone early in the second round? But it's all about filling a need, and with Okung gone now, I mean, it just makes left tackle be a glaring sign right now that this has to be addressed.
Yeah, and as we said, with now Jamarcus Webb in the building, if Spriggs comes into camp and he's struggling at left tackle, you can move him back out to right tackle for a year and teach him up and get him in the scheme and system and all that, and move him over in 2017. It's not. I mean, there's talk of doing it with a former tight end. So if they can do it with a tight end, they probably can do it with a guy who's played in a pretty powerful run up. I mean, the run offense is Indiana, I think.
Yeah, they know how to run the ball.
Yeah, they've had Tevin Coleman probably running behind Spriggs. I have to go back and watch, but he knows how to run block. It's just the other part of it, and it's the same with Decker. Obviously, he's had Zeke and Braxton and Cardale running amok behind him. So I think I've watched Decker earlier, and I think he's kind of sprung up on me a bit the last couple of days. But yeah, I think at 56, you're asking for trouble to be waiting for an offensive lineman, but the Seahawks have done with stranger things. So over under, we've got 6 weeks to decide to work this out. I'm going to put 3.5 on the over under of offensive lineman the Seahawks draft.
I want to say over, but I don't think that's John Schneider's style. I mean, he's going to find guys.
They drafted 2. If you count Circley, they drafted 3 last year. To draft 7 in 2 years.
It doesn't sound right. And the guys they drafted last year are projects that could be at the forefront of their mind as they're addressing needs every single pick. So I'd go with the under and just get some NFL ready offensive linemen, and then probably call it after 2.
Yeah, but to be honest, I think if it's even if it's at 26, I think it's going to be 3. I think they're going to get a tackle, a guy who can play all 3 interior, and a guy who can play probably all 5 spots. Someone like a McGovern or a Haig or Joe Dahl, who they took a keen interest in at Washington State's Pro Day last year, which I'll tell you about off air. So there was a few names to watch, especially Joe Haig. I think I like Billy Turner a few years ago, who ended up going to the Dolphins. He started 20 the last 30 games, I think, in Miami. So he's clearly been a second, third year kind of player. I think Joe Haig will be someone following a similar path because he looks the part. He's 6'6", he's massive, and he moves quite well. But yeah, I think 3 linemen, then you get corner, wide receiver, defensive lineman, linebacker, and probably a quarterback.
Yeah.
Do you think they draft a quarterback this year? Or do you think they go undrafted?
I think they draft one. I mean, it's obviously not a huge priority. They can wait till day 3. And quarterbacks, it's kind of a weak quarterback class, and obviously some guys like Wentz are going to be prioritized early on for teams that have a need. But there are going to be quarterbacks available on day 3 that they can be content with as projects and emergency backups if need be. But I mean, for the sake of depth and just making sure the roster is as well-rounded as can be, it makes sense to look at it this year.
Yeah, I think Dak Prescott's an interesting name to watch, I think, for Seattle. I think his stock has took a hit with the arrest he's had last week, so that could be a name to watch on day 3 if he makes it that far. But yeah, I think quarterback is a position they address. I don't think Tavares Jackson's coming back. Obviously, you got running back is now an issue because I don't think Fred Jackson's coming back. They re-signed Christian Michael 2 Chains today. So yeah, it's interesting. 6 weeks ago, obviously a lot will probably come out in the meantime when we add up some 4th choice defensive lineman from the Jags that no one's heard of, and he turns into a Pro Bowler. But yeah, it's a lot to be decided. There's a lot of weight on the first 2-3 picks for the Seahawks this year, probably more than the last couple of years, with the glaring needs that this team has. It would appear. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and we're seeing all the first round picks of years past just continuing to leave now, and it's time for some new ones to enter in and be part of the long-term solution, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's Davis Sue put on earlier. There's only one first round pick of any team on this team.
Yeah.
And he's the only first round pick of the six Schneider drafts who signed the second contract here. So it's a strange roster makeup, and it feasibly could be one where we trade back again at 26 and then still only have one first rounder on the team. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah. Right. Next time we'll reconvene will be on draft weekend. We'll sort the dates, promote it. Hopefully Ryder will be back in the fold. He messaged me last week saying he's coming back to do some writing in the next couple of weeks. But I'd like to thank Ken for joining me and hope the Badgers win tomorrow.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
I hope they at least keep the interest in college basketball up on campus for a couple of days, a week or so longer. Yeah, that's all we've got time for tonight. So as I said, keep watching for Drafting Seahawks on the website, free agency stuff, and we'll be convening for the draft weekend in around 5-6 weeks. Right, see you later.
All right.